After Lydia's wedding, I received a phone call that shattered everything I believed about my family. They were laughing, actually laughing. They thanked me for the wedding gift. They had forged my signature, put the condo I spent 8 years saving for on the market, and planned to use the money to pay for Lydia's $135,000 dream wedding. They didn't ask, they just took. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was learning that my sister had been taking credit for something I had been quietly doing for 4 years. Before with you. Let me take you back to where this story began. In our house, Lydia was treated like a precious child. I was expected to orbit. She was 4 years younger, charming, and always the center of attention. My parents claimed they didn't play favorites. They just had different expectations. For Lydia, life was meant to be gentle. For me, it was meant to build character. When I was 10 and she was 6, we both wanted piano lessons. My mother signed Lydia up immediately. Private lessons every Saturday morning, $50 a week. What about me? I asked. My mother barely looked up. Hafwin, you're old enough to teach yourself. I remember standing there as Lydia left for her first lesson with a brand new music book. I practiced on an old keyboard at home. No one noticed. That became the pattern. When I wanted to join choir, we couldn't afford the uniform. 2 months later, Lydia had a $250 costume for her recital. The one time I complained, my father sat me down with that familiar disappointed look. Don't be selfish. Your sister is more sensitive. She needs more support. You've always been the strong one. So I became strong. I stopped asking. I learned that speaking up made me difficult, jealous, ungrateful. Looking back, I realized they were preparing me for something. The pattern didn't end when I got older. When I graduated from college, first in my family to earn a degree, my parents weren't there. They forgot to book flights. They were helping Lydia move into an apartment in Bellevue they had co-signed because her credit wasn't strong enough. We'll celebrate at Christmas, my mother said. Lydia needed us. I walked across that stage alone. My roommate's parents took the photos. 8 years later, I bought my own condo in Seattle. No cosigner, no help, just long work weeks and careful saving. The day I got the keys, I called my parents. That's nice, my father said. Does it have a spare room? Lydia might need somewhere to stay. Not congratulations, just could your sister use it? You're so independent, my mother always told me. I used to think that was praise. It wasn't. It meant they didn't have to try, and I survived anyway. When they asked to keep my property documents in their lockbox for safekeeping, I handed them over without hesitation. I trusted them. That trust would cost me more than I imagined. 4 years before the wedding, my father made what he believed was a smart investment. A former friend pitched him a real estate development in Scottsdale, Arizona. He invested everything, retirement savings, home equity, all of it. 6 months later, the project collapsed. The developers disappeared. My parents were left with a mortgage they couldn't afford and a foreclosure notice on their door. I found out by accident. A past due letter from the bank was mailed to my address by mistake. Final warning. That afternoon, I called the bank, and I set up automatic payments from my own account. $2,350 a month. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want them to feel embarrassed, the hollow promises about paying me back someday. So I did what I'd always done. I handled it quietly. What I didn't realize was that Lydia had found out. A few months after I began making those $2,350 payments, she borrowed my laptop to finish a presentation for Brightwave Communications. She must have seen the bank confirmation emails, the receipts with my name, the exact amount, everything. And instead of thanking me, she told them she was the one paying the mortgage. I've been helping out, she apparently said. It's the least I can do. From my $3,800 a month PR salary, my parents were moved to tears. Their baby girl, so generous, so mature. They told people at church. They mentioned it to neighbors. They praised her at dinner. Meanwhile, the money kept leaving my account every month, and I kept saying nothing. I didn't know then that someone else was standing in the spotlight I had built. Then Lydia got engaged, and everything escalated. Ethan Caldwell was exactly what my parents had always wanted for her: polished, articulate, and most importantly, wealthy. His father, Thomas Caldwell Sr., was a founding partner at Caldwell and Myers LLP, one of the most respected firms in Seattle. His mother, Margaret Caldwell, chaired multiple charity foundations. The Caldwells had a summer home in Martha's Vineyard and spent winters in Aspen. When Lydia brought Ethan to dinner for the first time, I watched my parents transform. My father stood taller. My mother brought out dishes we hadn't used in years. They laughed too loudly at his jokes and nodded at opinions they'd never cared about before. "This wedding will change everything for this family," my father told me later, his eyes bright with something I'd never seen before: hope, or maybe desperation. Lydia's future is our future. They began planning immediately. Not just a wedding, a Caldwell-level wedding, Rainier Crest Country Club ballroom, 200 guests, a 12-piece orchestra, imported flowers, a $135,000 price tag, money they did not have. One night I overheard my mother whispering in the kitchen. "Lydia can't keep paying the mortgage and fund a wedding like this," she said softly. "She's already sacrificing so much for us. We need another solution." I remember feeling confused. Lydia barely made enough to cover her own expenses. How was she supposedly managing a $2,350 mortgage? But I pushed the thought aside. Maybe she'd gotten a raise. Maybe Ethan was helping. I had no idea she was living inside a lie, and I had no idea my parents were about to make me pay for it. That same week, my mother started browsing listings online. My listing. I didn't know that yet. My condo wasn't just a place to live. It was proof that I existed. 8 years of discipline were built into those walls. Every promotion, every skipped vacation, every time I said no to nights out because I was saving. All of it lived inside that 800-square-foot space with the bay window overlooking the park. I painted the bedroom myself, a muted sage that made mornings softer. I saved 6 months for the couch in the living room. The kitchen was small, but it was mine. The quiet was mine. For the first time in my life, I had something that belonged entirely to me. If I stayed silent, I wouldn't just lose property. I'd lose 8 years of work. I'd lose over $400,000 in value. I'd lose the only thing that proved I was more than a supporting character in Lydia's story. And she would keep accepting applause for sacrifices she never made. My parents would keep believing she was their selfless daughter, and I would keep funding their survival while they praised her generosity. That was the night something shifted. They never asked my opinion because they never expected me to say no. They had spent 32 years training me to adjust, to accommodate, to make space, and I had. But this wasn't about being the bigger person anymore. It was about being a person at all. Being quiet doesn't mean you have to disappear. That night, I made a decision. For the first time in my life, I was going to fight back, and I was going to tell the truth. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk reviewing quarterly reports when my mother's name lit up my screen. "Honey," she said, laughing. I could hear my father chuckling in the background. "We just wanted to thank you for the wedding present." I set down my pen. "What present?" "Your condo, sweetheart. We sold it, got a wonderful offer, cash buyer. Isn't that amazing?" The room tilted. My hands went cold. "You did what?" "We knew you'd understand," she said warmly. "You've always been so generous. Lydia's wedding is going to be beautiful now. The florist alone." "I never agreed to that." There was a pause, then my father's voice, firm and dismissive. "Halfwin, don't be dramatic. It's just an apartment. It's my apartment." "We're family," he replied. My mother came back on the line, using that calm, patient tone she reserved for explaining something to a child. "What's yours is ours. That's how family works. And you'll find another place. You're so capable." Capable. The word they used when they meant replaceable. My throat tightened. "How did you even—" "I didn't sign anything." Silence. Then my father cleared his throat. "We handled the paperwork. You gave us the documents years ago, remember? We just—" Facilitated the process. Facilitated. They had forged my signature. They had committed fraud. And they were still laughing. The closing is next week, my mother added cheerfully. We really appreciate you, honey. We always knew we could count on you. I ended the call without saying goodbye. They were still laughing when the line went dead. They had no idea what they'd just triggered, but I was about to find out exactly how far this went. Natalie Harper had been my best friend since our first week of college. She was also one of the sharpest real estate attorneys in Seattle. They did what? Her voice went flat when I explained. Listed my condo, forged my signature. They think the sale is done. Give me an hour. And 47 minutes later, she called back. It's not finalized, she said. They signed a purchase agreement, but closing hasn't happened. The title company flagged the signature. It doesn't match your records. Relief rushed through me, then anger. So it's not legal. It's fraud, Hafwin. You could press charges. Criminal charges against my own parents. I sat with that. There's something else, Natalie continued. I've been piecing together your parents' finances. Your mom mentioned at the grocery store that Lydia's been paying their mortgage for years. She was bragging about it. My blood went cold. What? She said Lydia's been covering it, called her the selfless one. That's impossible. My hands began to shake. I've been paying it for 4 years. Every statement is from my account. Every confirmation email has my name. A pause. Hafwin, are you certain? I have every record. My account number, my routing number, it's all mine. Another silence. Heavy. Then Lydia's been lying, Natalie said quietly. She's been taking credit for your money. The room felt like it tilted. She hadn't just stayed quiet. She had actively claimed it, for 4 years. I need copies of everything, I said. Every statement, every payment, and I need to know exactly what she told them. That evening, I drove to my parents' house in Bellevue. No warning, no plan. I just needed to see their faces. My mother opened the door smiling. Hafwin, what a surprise. We were just working on the seating chart. I stepped inside. My father sat at the kitchen table, invoices and vendor contracts spread in front of him. Why didn't you ask me? I said. My voice was calm. I had practiced calm. Ask you what, honey? My mother replied. About my condo. About selling something that belongs to me. My father waved a hand dismissively. We've already discussed this. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I sat down across from him. By the way, I said lightly, how has Lydia been managing to pay your $2,350 mortgage every month on her salary? My mother's face lit up. She's been incredible, like clockwork. Such a selfless girl. Interesting, I said. And she told you that herself? Of course. Oh, are we talking about me? Lydia appeared in the doorway, still in her work clothes. For a second, something flickered across her face. Then she smiled, that same practiced, polished smile. Yes, she said smoothly. I've been helping out. That's what family does. She held my gaze when she said it. She knew I knew, and she didn't flinch. It's my wedding, Hafwin, her tone sharpened. For once, can this just be about me? I stood. My mother was saying something about gratitude, about family unity, about not making waves. I wasn't listening. I walked out without another word. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. Before I tell you what happened at Rainier Crest that night, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone else accept credit for your work? If you have, you already know how that betrayal feels. And what happened at that reception? Lydia wasn't the only one who was blindsided. But first, I needed proof. Natalie spread the documents across her conference table. 4 years of bank statements, highlighted, annotated, organized. 48 payments, she said. Every single one from your account. Your name, your routing number, it's airtight. I stared at the stack. $112,800. Almost the exact amount my parents were preparing to spend on that wedding. There's no way Lydia could have made these payments, Natalie continued. Entry-level PR coordinators at Brightwave make about $3,800 a month before taxes. She would have had to give up most of her income. She couldn't afford rent. She knew the exact number, I said quietly. She saw the confirmation email years ago. That's how she knew what to tell them. Natalie nodded slowly. She found your evidence, she said, and used it to build her lie. I picked up one of the bank statements. My name was printed clearly across the top. Hoffwin Brooks. Not Lydia. Me. You know what this means, right? Natalie said gently, but her tone was firm. If you show these at the wedding, you're not just exposing your parents, you're exposing Lydia. In front of Ethan. In front of the Caldwells. I thought about Ethan Caldwell, about the Caldwell name, built on reputation, discipline, legacy, about what his father, Thomas Caldwell Sr., would think of a bride who had lied about money for 4 straight years. The Caldwells deserve to know who they're really welcoming into their family, I said quietly. Natalie didn't argue. She just started making copies. 4 years of my money, I murmured, and she smiled every time they thanked her. That night, I went through every email I had ever exchanged with my parents. It didn't take long. 2 years earlier, when I hesitated about leaving my property documents with them, my mother had written, "Don't worry, honey, we're just keeping them safe. We would never do anything without asking." A month later, my father followed up. "We would never touch your property without your permission. It's just for safekeeping. Trust us. Trust us." I printed both emails. Then Natalie sent something that made my stomach drop. "They forgot to remove me from your family group chat," she texted. "I got added years ago when I helped your mom review her will. I've had it muted, but I can still see everything." She forwarded a screenshot. The message was from Lydia, dated 3 weeks earlier, right after my parents decided to sell my condo. "Don't worry about Halfwin's condo. She won't make a scene. She never does. I read it 3 times, then a 4th. She never does. My own sister. She wasn't just silent. She had reassured them. She had told them I would roll over. She had counted on my silence the way you count on sunrise." She knew, I said out loud in my empty condo. She knew exactly what she was doing. I printed the screenshot and added it to the folder. She didn't just benefit from my silence. She relied on it. And maybe once, she would have been right. But that was before I understood what I was up against. That was before I decided to stop being easy. "You have 3 options," Natalie said, sliding a legal pad toward me. 1, we go to the police now. Forgery is a felony. Your parents could face charges. I pictured my father in handcuffs, my mother sitting in a courtroom. "What else?" I asked. 2, wait until after the wedding. Handle it privately. But by then, Lydia will be married into the Caldwell family. They'll protect her. They'll control the narrative. You'll be painted as the jealous older sister who tried to sabotage everything." She paused. "And 3, confront them publicly at the wedding, before the marriage is finalized." The idea should have horrified me. Creating a scene at my sister's wedding, humiliating my parents in front of 200 guests, everything I had been trained to avoid. But something inside me had shifted. "If I wait until after," I said slowly, "they'll spin it. They'll say I'm bitter, jealous, that I'm trying to ruin her happiness. And Lydia will be protected," Natalie finished. "The Caldwells deserve the truth," I said. The words felt heavy, certain. Ethan deserves the truth. That evening, I called Daniel Mercer, the buyer who had submitted the offer on my condo. I explained everything: the forged signature, the fraudulent sale, the fact that I had never agreed to anything. He was quiet for a long moment. "Let me speak to my attorney," he finally said. 2 days later, he withdrew from the transaction. The deposit was returned. The sale was void. My parents didn't know yet. They were still planning the wedding of the year with money that no longer existed. 10 days remained until the ceremony, and I had just set something in motion that would unravel everything. "I'm not trying to destroy them," I told Natalie, "but they need to face what they did. All of them." The morning of the wedding, I woke up in my condo. My condo. Still mine. still standing. Still the only place in the world that belonged entirely to me. Morning light streamed through the bay window, stretching long shadows across the bedroom floor. Somewhere across Seattle, Lydia was probably getting her hair styled, surrounded by champagne, bridesmaids, and the illusion of a flawless day. My phone buzzed. A text from Natalie. "Everything's ready. Good luck." I showered slowly, made coffee, took my time. On my bed lay the bridesmaid dress Lydia had chosen for me, a pale pink that drained the color from my face. She had insisted it fit the wedding aesthetic. I suspected she just didn't want anyone looking at me. Next to the dress sat a manila folder. Inside were 48 months of bank statements, the original deed to my condo, the voided purchase agreement, printed emails where my parents promised they would never touch my property without asking, and a screenshot of Lydia writing, "She won't make a scene. She never does." I studied myself in the mirror. The dress was as unflattering as expected. But that didn't matter. I slid the folder into my purse and checked my reflection one last time. The woman staring back at me looked calm, not angry, not shaking, just ready. They expected me to smile, toast, and stay quiet. They had no idea I had already changed the ending. Rainier Crest Country Club was 40 minutes away. The ceremony began at 2, and I had something to say. Rainier Crest had been transformed into a fantasy. White roses draped every archway. A 12-piece orchestra played Pachelbel as guests took their seats. Crystal chandeliers caught the afternoon sun and scattered light across polished marble floors. 200 guests, 200 witnesses. I stood near the back, watching my parents work the room. My father shook hands confidently, as if he hadn't forged a signature 3 weeks earlier. My mother floated between tables in a new dress and borrowed jewelry. "Both our daughters are so selfless," I heard her tell Margaret Caldwell. "We're truly blessed." Margaret smiled politely. Thomas Caldwell Sr., silver-haired, composed, built on reputation and discipline, nodded as though he approved. "Lydia has been supporting us financially for years," my mother continued, her voice carrying. "She's such a devoted daughter." My grip tightened on my purse. The folder pressed against my hip. Across the ballroom, Lydia caught my eye. She was radiant in silk and lace, every inch the glowing bride. She waved at me with that familiar practiced smile. No guilt, no hesitation, just the easy confidence of someone who had never been held accountable. She expected me to smile back. I didn't. The ceremony itself was flawless. The vows were tender. Lydia cried exactly when she was supposed to. And I waited. By 6 o'clock, the reception was underway. 200 guests filled tables draped in white linen, centerpieces towering above them, arrangements that likely cost more than my monthly salary. I sat at the family table. The folder rested in my lap beneath the tablecloth. My parents beamed. Lydia glowed. Ethan held her hand like she was made of light. Then my father stood, champagne glass raised. The room quieted instantly. "Family," he began, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "That's what today is about. Sacrifice, unity, everyone doing their part." My jaw tightened. "I want to thank the people who made this day possible." He paused. "First, my daughter Lydia, who has been supporting this family financially for years. Her generosity has carried us through difficult times." Lydia lowered her head modestly. Soft applause rippled through the room. "And to Hafwin," my father continued, finding me in the crowd with a warm, proud smile, "for the most generous wedding gift of all, her condo, so her sister could have the wedding of her dreams." Applause. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward me, waiting for gratitude, waiting for humility. Lydia rose slightly from her chair and gave a graceful nod, accepting praise for sacrifices she had never made. The weight of every gaze pressed down on me. "Let's raise a glass to our daughters," my father concluded. "The best children parents could ask for." Glasses lifted, guests drank, Lydia basked in it. And I stood, not to smile, not to nod, but to speak. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, controlled. "May I say something?" His smile flickered, just briefly. But 200 people were watching, and Jonathan Brooks had never declined an audience. Of course, sweetheart. He handed me the microphone. The floor is yours. It felt solid in my hand, grounded. Thank you, I said, turning to face the room. I do have something to clarify about those sacrifices you mentioned. Silence, complete silence, even the servers froze. At the family table, Lydia's smile faltered. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I watched the color drain from her face. She knew. In that instant, she understood exactly what was about to happen. Since we're talking about sacrifice, I said calmly, I think everyone deserves the full story. My mother leaned forward, her expression shifting from pride to confusion to the first flicker of panic. My father's jaw tightened. Ethan watched me carefully now, and Thomas Caldwell Sr. slowly set down his champagne glass, studying me with the sharp, measured focus of a man who had built his career reading people. 200 guests were watching. The Caldwell family was watching. And my sister, my generous, devoted sister who had claimed my money for 4 years, was watching too. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder. I have documentation to support everything I'm about to say, I continued. My voice didn't shake. So please let me finish. The room felt smaller somehow, still. Before I go any further, let me ask you something. If you were in my place, would you stay silent? Or would you speak? Because what I said next changed everything. My father had just thanked me for giving up my condo. I adjusted the microphone slightly. I want to clarify something. The ballroom was silent enough that I could hear the faint hum of the air system. I didn't give it. I paused. Let it settle. I didn't sell it. Another pause. I didn't even know it was being sold until 3 weeks ago. A wave of gasps rippled through the room. My parents listed my condo without my knowledge or consent, I said. They forged my signature on the sale documents. Hafwin, what are you doing? My father snapped, his voice sharp with warning. I'm not finished. My mother had gone pale, gripping the edge of the table as though it might steady her. Thomas Caldwell Sr.'s expression shifted, no longer curious. Now it was cold. I have the original deed, I said, lifting the document so the front rows could see. Hafwin Brooks, sole owner. I purchased that condo with 8 years of savings. I never authorized a sale. Whispers spread across the ballroom. Ethan was staring at my parents now, not at me. I have proof of everything, I repeated. Please let me finish. My mother opened her mouth, perhaps to explain, to redirect, to soften the blow. No sound came out. And here's the part that matters, I continued. The sale was never legal. I pulled out another document. In Washington state, a property sale without the owner's verified signature is void. That's basic law. My father's face had gone from flushed to gray. I contacted the buyer, Daniel Mercer, last week. I explained that my signature had been forged. I held up the termination notice. He withdrew from the purchase. The deposit has already been returned. The transaction is void. That's not possible, my mother whispered. The money we were expecting. It's not coming, I said evenly. Lydia's hand tightened around Ethan's arm. What does that mean? She whispered. It means the condo is still mine, I said, turning to face her directly. It was always mine, and you knew that. Ethan gently pulled his arm away, not dramatically. Just enough. I held up the deed again beside the canceled contract, both with my name, both proving what had been done. Thomas Caldwell Sr. stood. The movement was controlled, deliberate, instantly commanding the room's attention. He walked toward me, hand extended. May I see those documents? I handed the folder to Thomas Caldwell Sr. without hesitation. He flipped through the pages. The deed, the voided contract, the signatures. His face remained composed, but something shifted in his posture. A subtle tightening, a quiet recalculation. Hafwin, please, my mother whispered. Not here, not today. This is exactly where it needs to happen, I replied. And exactly when? Because there was more. And everyone in that ballroom was about to understand how deep this really went. I turned back to the microphone. There's something else you should know. The silence was absolute, 200 people holding their breath. My father just thanked Lydia for supporting this family financially for years, for paying the mortgage. I looked directly at her. Isn't that right, Lydia? Her face was frozen. Fear flickered behind her eyes. Here's the truth. I reached for the bank statements Thomas Caldwell Sr. was still holding. For the past 4 years, I've been the one paying our parents' mortgage. Every month, $2,350. My father staggered slightly. What? Every payment. I lifted the statements high enough for those nearby to see. My name printed across each page. Halfwyn Brooks. 48 consecutive transfers. Account numbers, routing numbers, dates, all mine. I faced Lydia again. You saw the confirmation emails years ago. You knew it was me, and you told them it was you. I can explain, her voice broke. You accepted praise for $112,800 of my money, I said calmly. Every time Mom thanked you, every time Dad called you selfless, every time you smiled and said you're welcome, that was my sacrifice, and you took it. Ethan slowly rose from his seat. He looked at Lydia as if seeing her for the first time. You lied? His voice was quiet, but it carried. All of it? Ethan, please. He stepped back. Thomas Caldwell Sr. lifted his gaze from the papers. He looked at my parents, then at Lydia, then back at me. I never told you I was paying, I said, lowering my voice slightly. Because I didn't want you to feel ashamed. A few guests shifted in their seats. I'm not standing here to hurt anyone. I'm standing here because the truth matters, and I'm tired of being silent. The room felt suspended in time. As of today, I continued, I am no longer paying your mortgage. My father's face crumpled. Halfwyn, you can't. We'll lose the house. You tried to take mine, I replied evenly, and Lydia took credit for saving yours. Lydia was crying now. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. No anger, no triumph, just clarity. Maybe now, I said, you can actually start paying it, since everyone already believes you have. Then I turned to my parents, and what I felt wasn't rage, it was grief. I loved you enough to save your home in secret, I said. 4 years, over $100,000. I never asked for recognition. I never even told you. My voice wavered only slightly. But neither of you loved me enough to ask before taking mine. I set the microphone down. The soft click echoed through the silent ballroom. I picked up my purse, lighter now without the folder, and turned toward the exit. From across the room, I heard Natalie's voice, steady and proud. That's my girl. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I didn't need to see the arguments, the accusations, the unraveling. I had said what I came to say. The silence lasted 4 seconds after I stepped away. Then the room erupted. Whispers became conversations. Conversations became chaos. Phones appeared. Guests leaned toward each other in disbelief. The Caldwell cousins clustered together, some horrified, others calculating. Is it true? Ethan's voice cut through the noise. He was standing directly in front of Lydia now. Did you lie to me too? I was going to tell you, she said weakly. For 4 years? His tone was flat. You lied about money to your own parents. To me. Thomas Caldwell Sr. approached my father. They were roughly the same age, but the difference between them was undeniable. My father looked smaller, shrunken. Thomas Caldwell looked like a man delivering judgment. You assured us your family valued integrity, he said quietly. You assured us Lydia was trustworthy. It's a misunderstanding, my father began. There's nothing unclear about this, Margaret Caldwell said sharply. 4 years of deception isn't confusion, it's character. Lydia pushed through the crowd and grabbed my arm near the doorway. Halfwyn, wait, you ruined my wedding. I stopped, looked at her. No, I said calmly. You ruined it the day you chose to lie. Her face collapsed, not with remorse but with disbelief. as if she genuinely thought I would never say no. Behind us, guests were already gathering their coats and purses. Ethan wasn't following Lydia. He was walking in the opposite direction, toward the exit. I kept moving. Lydia chased after me down the hallway, her heels striking sharply against the marble floor. "How could you do this to me?" she cried. Mascara streaked down her face, her voice shaking. "On my wedding day?" I stopped and turned. "You knew exactly what you were doing," I said evenly. "Every single month, for 4 years. I was trying to help. Every time Mom praised you," I cut in, steady. "Every time Dad thanked you, you smiled and said, 'You're welcome.'" I was going to tell them. "That wasn't a mistake," I said. "It was a choice. You had 48 chances to tell the truth. You didn't." My mother hurried up behind her, breathless. "Hafwin, please. We can talk about this." "We should have talked 4 years ago," I replied. "Or 3 weeks ago, when you decided to sell my home without asking." Her face crumpled, just briefly. For a second, I felt the old pull. The instinct to soften things, to make it easier. Then I remembered the laughter on the phone, the assumption that I would simply accept it. "Goodbye, Mom." I walked through the grand entrance of Rainier Crest, past the stunned valet and the guests whispering behind me. The evening air was cool against my skin. Natalie was waiting by her car. "How do you feel?" she asked quietly. I thought about it, like I had just spoken the truth for the first time in my life. I inhaled the crisp autumn air, and it didn't break me. She opened the passenger door. "Let's go." We drove to a small cafe a few miles away, far enough to avoid wedding guests, close enough that my hands had stopped trembling by the time we arrived. Natalie ordered us black coffee. No sugar. The kind you drink when you need clarity. "You could press charges," she said, stirring her cup. "Forgery is a felony. Your parents could face real consequences." I wrapped my hands around the mug. "I know. The evidence is solid. The statements, the forged signature, the emails promising they wouldn't touch your property. Any prosecutor would take this case." Steam curled upward from the coffee. Outside, the sky faded into orange and pink. "No," I said finally. The certainty surprised even me. "I don't want them in prison. I just wanted them to face what they did." Natalie nodded. "And Lydia?" "That's between her and Ethan now," I said. "And her conscience, if she has one." My phone began vibrating, then again, and again. I flipped it over. 23 missed calls from my mother, 15 from my father, 8 from Lydia, a dozen frantic texts. I silenced it and set it face down. "I'm done being the one who always answers," I said. Natalie lifted her cup. "To new beginnings." I clinked mine against hers. "To new beginnings." 3 days later, the fallout was still spreading. Most of what I learned came secondhand, through Natalie, through old college friends, through the cousin who had quietly supported me for years. The Brooks family image was unraveling faster than anyone expected. Ethan moved out of Lydia's apartment the night of the wedding. He went straight to his parents' house and hadn't returned. Word was that Caldwell and Meyer's attorneys were already drafting annulment papers. "Marriage based on misrepresentation," my cousin texted. "That's the phrase they're using." Brightwave Communications placed Lydia on indefinite leave. Reputation concerns. Apparently, a PR professional who had lied about money for 4 years wasn't ideal for a firm built on public trust. The church community was buzzing. Mrs. Carter, who had heard my father's toast firsthand, had repeated the story before Sunday service even began. My parents didn't show up that weekend. My phone kept lighting up. Messages from distant relatives, old classmates, people I barely knew. I always thought something felt off. "Your mom used to brag about Lydia nonstop. Never about you. I saw the wedding video on Facebook. You were iconic." Late that evening, a text came through from my grandmother. "I'm proud of you, Hafwin." I always suspected Lydia wasn't telling the whole truth. Your grandfather would have been proud too. I sat in my condo, still mine, still standing, and watched the city lights flicker on beyond the bay window. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt quiet. And for the first time in years, that quiet felt like peace. 2 weeks later, my father called. I almost ignored it. But something, curiosity maybe, made me answer. Hafwin. His voice sounded smaller, older. We got a letter from the bank. I waited. They're giving us 90 days. After that, he trailed off. Have you asked Lydia? I kept my tone neutral. She's been telling you she pays it for years. Maybe she can help. A long silence. She can't, he admitted finally. She never could. We know that now. I know, Dad, I said softly. I've always known. Another pause. Why didn't you tell us it was you? I had asked myself that same question. Why hadn't I demanded recognition? Why had I let them believe their golden child was saving them? Would it have mattered? I asked. Would you have treated me differently? He didn't answer. He didn't have one. I'm not paying anymore, I said. You'll have to figure this out. Hafwin, please. You tried to take my home, I reminded him gently. I can't keep saving you from yourselves. Another silence, and then I said what needed to be said. I'm not part of that version of this family anymore. I ended the call. 17 missed calls from my mother followed. 4 from Lydia. I returned none of them. For 32 years, I had been the one who answered. The fixer. The safety net. It was someone else's turn. 2 months later, the house in Bellevue went up for sale. My cousin sent me the listing. $610,000. Price to move. It sold in 11 days. After the mortgage balance and bank penalties, there was almost nothing left. My parents moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town, the same complex Lydia was now renting in. The annulment came through shortly after. Marriage based on material misrepresentation, my cousin texted. Ethan had already moved on. Rumor said he was seeing another attorney from his father's firm. Brightwave kept Lydia on indefinite leave. Apparently, reputation management firms prefer employees who don't fabricate financial generosity for 4 years. I didn't reach out. I didn't celebrate. I just kept living. One evening, a letter arrived. No return address. But I recognized my mother's handwriting. I almost threw it away. Instead, I opened it. Dear Hafwin, I'm sorry for not seeing you, for always putting Lydia first, for believing her without question. You deserved parents who noticed you, who celebrated you the way we celebrated your sister. We failed you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know. I see it now. I see what you gave us. I see how we never said thank you. Your father is too proud to write this. I'm not. You deserved better. Mom. I read it twice, then set it on the kitchen counter. It's a start, I murmured to the empty room. But words are easy. Change takes time. 6 months after the wedding, I sat by my bay window watching the sunset. The same condo, still mine. But it felt different now. I repainted the bedroom a deeper green, bought curtains I actually loved, replaced the old couch with one I chose without guilt. The space felt lighter, like it could breathe. Natalie came over for dinner every Thursday now. We cooked something complicated, opened a bottle of wine, and avoided talking about my family. You look different, she said one evening. Lighter. I stopped carrying people who would never carry me, I replied. She raised her glass. I raised mine. Work shifted too. The promotion I had been chasing for 2 years finally came through. An extra $1,100 a month. Money that used to disappear into my parents' mortgage now stayed in my account. I opened a travel fund, booked a trip to Portugal. For 32 years, I had saved everything for everyone else. Been the backup plan, the safety net, the dependable one. Now I was learning to spend something on myself. My phone buzzed. A number I hadn't blocked. Lydia. I'm sorry for everything. Can we talk? I stared at it. A year ago, 6 months ago, I would have answered immediately, smoothed it over, made peace. But I wasn't that person anymore. I set the phone down and took another sip of wine. Maybe someday. Not today. You might wonder if I'll ever forgive them. I don't know yet. What I do know is this. Forgiveness isn't permission. It isn't pretending nothing happened. It isn't shrinking yourself so other people feel comfortable. Being the quiet one, the peacekeeper, the giver, that isn't noble if it costs you your self-respect. I learned that the hard way. I used to think my silence made me mature. It just made me invisible. For 32 years, I was easy to overlook, easy to take from, easy to lie to. I'm not easy anymore. My phone buzzed again. I'm sorry, can we talk? This time I picked it up and typed back, actions, not words. Show me you've changed, then we'll talk. I hit send. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. Maybe my parents will find their way back to me with more than apologies. Maybe they won't. But that isn't the point anymore. The point is this. I stopped waiting for them to see me. I stopped needing their approval to know my worth. Family isn't just blood, it's respect. And respect either goes both ways, or it doesn't exist at all. There's something I learned the hard way. Being the strong one in the family doesn't mean you owe everyone your silence. Being capable doesn't mean you're disposable. And loving people doesn't mean allowing them to rewrite your story. For years, I thought staying quiet made me mature. I thought sacrificing without recognition made me noble. I thought absorbing the hurt kept the peace. It didn't. It just made me invisible. This story isn't about revenge. It's about boundaries. It's about the moment you realize that protecting your dignity matters more than protecting someone else's comfort. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to scream. It's to calmly tell the truth, because the truth doesn't destroy families. Lies do. If you've ever been the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who fixes everything while someone else takes the credit, I hope you remember this. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to speak up. You are allowed to stop being easy. And the moment you stop shrinking yourself to fit someone else's expectations, that's the moment you finally take your life back. If you've ever been the quiet one, the one who gave while someone else took credit, I see you.